Hello, friends. We are walking into a world that is getting more and more illusory every single day. It seems like those illusions that surround us are getting more convincing, more widespread, and more loved with every passing day. And as a Christian who loves the truth, I want to give you some encouragement in this video on how to stay grounded in truth and how to respond to a world that is increasingly fascinated with illusion. And also discuss what is the effect spiritually of illusion. I want to start with two clips. One of them is from Yuval Noah Harari's presentation at Davos last year. And then we're going to make some reflections biblically on these two clips. But basically, the premise is this. The world is becoming unable to distinguish truth from illusion. And that has far-reaching consequences on politics and our faith and even just human relationships. And so let's take a look at this first clip and we'll come back and make some reflections.
Consequently, since ancient times, humans feared being trapped in a world of illusions. In the 17th century, René Descartes feared that perhaps a malicious demon was trapping him inside this kind of world of illusions, creating everything that Descartes saw and heard. In ancient Greece, Plato told the famous allegory of the cave, in which a group of people is chained inside a cave all their lives, facing a blank wall, a screen. On that screen, they see projected various shadows, and the prisoners mistake these illusions, these shadows, for the reality. In ancient India, Buddhist and Hindu sages pointed out that all humans lived trapped inside what they called Maya. Maya is the world of illusions. Buddha said that what we normally take to be reality is often just fictions in our own minds. People may wage entire wars, killing others and being willing to be killed themselves because of their belief in these fictions. So the AI revolution is bringing us face to face with Descartes' demon, with Plato's cave, with the Maya. If we are not careful, a curtain of illusions could descend over the whole of humankind, and we will never be able to tear that curtain away or even realize that it is there, because we'll think this is reality.
I want to stop right there. So this scenario that was foretold even by ancients, looking back to the days of Plato and even earlier, is very much happening around us now. It's a world where people have been so much in the cave that they don't even realize they're in the cave, that they don't even realize what they're looking at is shadows and not actual truth. And we are getting closer and closer to this time where the curtain is there now and people don't even realize that it's there. And so although I would disagree fundamentally with Yuval on so many things regarding religion, because he would actually lump religion into the world of illusions. He's not a believer. He believes that the Bible's fake and it's not communicating truth. So I would disagree with him fundamentally on a lot of things. But on this point, he is, I think, correct that AI is creating an illusory world around us that is going to cause it to be more and more difficult for people to discern and to communicate truth. Let's continue.
And social media, if this sounds far-fetched, so just look at social media over the last few years. Social media has given us a small taste of things to come. In social media, primitive AI tools, but very primitive, have been used not to create content, but to curate content which is produced by human beings. The humans produce stories and videos and whatever, and the AI chooses which stories, which videos would reach our ears and eyes, selecting those that will get the most attention, that will be the most viral. And while very primitive, these AI tools have nevertheless been sufficient to create this kind of curtain of illusions that increased societal polarization all over the world, undermined our mental health, and destabilized democratic societies. Millions of people have confused these illusions for the reality. The USA has the most powerful information technology in the whole of history, and yet American citizens can no longer agree who won the last elections, or whether climate change is real, or whether vaccines prevent illnesses or not.
Isn't that interesting? So we talk about how advanced we're getting as a world, and even the USA having arguably the most powerful technology in the world, and yet we can't seem to agree on the facts, right? And it's almost like there is enough doubt surrounding what's publicly available for facts that we can't find consensus. And I find that that's really increasingly the world that we are stepping into, is this world of we don't really know if it's true or not. How do we know if it's true or not? And those are the types of questions that get really uncomfortable when you start talking about people in the millions and billions, and you have polarization like he's talking about. And that was a really pretty primitive use of AI in his words. The algorithms of social media are AI based, but they're not generative. They are just curative. So they're curating the content that we see online, and they're putting it into a news feed that is organized by relevance for us, and the AI is making decisions on what's relevant, right? And so you have a world already that's getting pretty split on the facts, and we already see that people are having a hard time agreeing on the facts, and it seems like less and less are they looking to God's word as the source of fact, and more looking to the internet and others and consensus and collective other people to determine and establish truth. And I think that he's right on this. That's a pretty primitive use of this technology. What about when you get to the more advanced uses? What are you going to see in terms of trends in that space? Let's continue.
The new AI tools are far, far more powerful than these social media algorithms, and they could cause far more damage. Now, of course, AI has enormous positive potential too. I didn't talk about it because the people who develop AI naturally talk about it enough. You don't need me to add up to that chorus. The job of historians and philosophers like myself is often to point out the dangers. But certainly, AI can help us in countless ways, from finding new cures to cancer to discovering solutions to the ecological crisis that we are facing. In order to make sure that the new AI tools are used for good and not for ill, we first need to appreciate their true capabilities, and we need to regulate them very, very carefully. Since 1945, we knew that nuclear technology could physically destroy human civilization, as well as benefiting us by producing cheap and plentiful energy. We therefore reshaped the entire international order to protect ourselves and to make sure that nuclear technology is used primarily for good.
This is Mosey.
Have to grapple with a new weapon of mass destruction that can annihilate our mental and social world. And one big difference between nukes and AI, nukes cannot produce more powerful nukes. AI can produce more powerful AI. So we need to act quickly before AI gets out of our control.
Okay. Well, I think this has been very, very interesting to hear this clip now, a year after this was spoken by Yuval at Davos. I think that a lot has happened in that year, and only really to confirm his hypothesis that we are stepping into this greater illusion, and we have tools that are very powerful. And yes, these tools are akin to the nuclear bomb in the way that they've created absolute potential annihilation, but also potentially great good and bountiful energy. I think that that's the double-edged sword that we see with AI as well. You have the shroud of disinformation and fake information and illusion, and you have the potential for discovery and the potential for automation and the potential for revolutionary leverage of technology into the world that we are going into in the future. So you have sort of the double-edgedness there. Now, it's within that sort of double-edgedness that I think we find need for great discernment and wisdom, and as you've all saying here, regulation. But it's also in that double-edgedness that I think we have a widespread conversation that we need to have, and that is: are we heading into a utopia with this technology? Or are we heading into great danger with this technology? Now, I want to take another voice on this and bring him into the picture. His name is Jonathan Pageau. He is a thinker. He's an iconographer. He creates icons, and he runs a pretty successful YouTube channel. And his YouTube channel talks about the symbolic world. But Jonathan has some pretty interesting takes on AI that are fairly similar to mine. Namely, that the AI is speaking like a dragon, and it really resembles the picture that we get in Revelation chapter 13. So he's going to substantiate that out a little bit. But here in this little clip from Daily Wire, it's Mr. Peterson, right, with Jonathan Pageau and Jim Keller. And these two voices about AI are opposing. So Jordan has these two guys on, and the video is actually entitled AI, the Beast, or Jerusalem. What future is this technology bringing us into? And you have Jim Keller, who's been involved with a lot of these companies developing these tools. And so he's a proponent of maybe we're able to use these still for a good future. And then you have Jonathan, who sees the other side, which is that actually things will probably get much worse before they get better. And I think he believes that getting better is probably that we get bailed out of the situation by God at the end of time. So I want to play a little clip here because they're talking about this illusory world. Jonathan has just finished making a case that whoever holds the keys of the technology is basically the one who guides global thought, which is what we've been talking about as well here on the channel, that whoever creates the AI and the chatbot and whatever the default settings of that chatbot are will affect billions of people's views. That's why many times I've gone to the chatbots and even just asked the question, did Jesus come in the flesh? Was Jesus a historical fact of history? And surprisingly, we can't seem to get the AI to say that. They've always said things like, it's a matter of faith. We're not really sure. The evidence is inconclusive. And I'm like, yo, who trained this thing? The evidence is overwhelming for Jesus's existence. And yet somehow we can't distill it into this chatbot. So that's why these things matter. It's because the default settings, the alignment of the creators will affect everyone else who uses the technology. Let's take a listen to what Jonathan has to say in this interview. Pretty interesting.
And that's a real possibility. The increasing power always creates the two at the same time. And so we saw that, increase in power creates first, or it depends in which direction it happens. It creates an increase in decentralization, an increase in access, and it creates all that. But then it also, at the same time, creates the counter reaction, which is an increase in control and increase in centralization. And so now, the more the power is, the more the bigger the waves will be. And so the image that 1984 presented to us, of of people going into newspapers and changing the headlines and taking the pictures out and doing that now obviously can happen with just a click. So you can click and you can change the past. You can change the past. You can change facts about the world because they're all held, online. And we've seen it happen obviously in the media recently. Yeah. But
I find this to be a very compelling case. Jonathan says that whoever holds the keys basically holds the collective perception of truth. And now he's making the case that the same tools that are powerful enough to create distributed power or decentralization are also powerful enough to create the opposite effect, which is centralization. And it's interesting that, 1984 talked about this future where people would be changing the headlines of the news and whatnot. That's actually kind of what we see. We see a world where people are wanting to change the past, and they can do it with a click. They can create new fake histories. And even the very fact that AI cannot say with certainty that Jesus existed tells me that there's already this manipulation taking place in terms of the internal structures of these tools.
So does decentralization win over centralization? How is that even possible, it seems?
I mean, and it's also interesting, like when Amazon became a platform, suddenly any mom and pop business could have Amazon, eBay, there's a bunch of platforms, which had an amazing impact. Mm-hmm. Because any business could get to anybody. But then the platform itself started to control the information flow, right? But at some point that'll turn into, people go, well, why am I letting somebody control my information flow when Amazon objectively doesn't really have any capability, right? So like you point out, the waves are getting bigger, but they're real waves. It's the same with information. The information's all online. It's also on 1 billion hard drives, right? So somebody says, I'm going to erase objective fact. A distributed information system would say, yeah, go ahead and erase it anywhere you want. There's another 1,000 copies of it.
Yeah, and that's what
but again, this is
tried to do, didn't they?
Yeah, and this is where thinking people have to say, yeah, this is a serious problem. Like if humans don't have anything to fight for, they get lazy and, a little bit dopey in my view. Like we do have something to fight for. And, that's worth talking about. Like what would a great world with, distributed, and human intelligence and artificial intelligence working together in a collaborative way to create abundance and fairness and, like some better way at arriving at good decisions than what the truth is. That would be a good thing. Mm-hmm. But it's not, well, we'll leave it to the experts and then the experts will tell us what to do. That's a bad thing.
Yeah.
So here we've heard Jim. Now he's this guy with the black t-shirt. He's Mr. AMD Intel computer expert. And Jonathan's this guy wearing the suit. Now Jim is coming back against what Jonathan is saying and basically saying, well, try to erase objective fact, and there's 1 million copies of it, 1 billion copies even, on hard drives everywhere. But what we see, I guess, even though those 1 billion copies exist, is a deprioritization of those distributed copies, and whoever holds the ultimate copy, I would say the Google platform holds a pretty authoritative copy of whatever's out there. What's their capability to influence thought? And do they actually consult every single one of those distributed copies of information, or do they have their own centralized copy that is basically what they distribute? And I think we see the latter in the case of the internet. We see that it's not that all of these voices have equal authority and equal standing. There are actually publications that talk about the veracity of Jesus's incarnation, and it's a widely accepted fact even in academia that he lived on planet Earth, and yet you have the centralized version of that information in the form of an AI that says, no, he didn't. It's a matter of faith. Can't quite arrive at that based on archaeology. When the distributed copies and even just the archaeological facts would say, yes, he did. Somehow the centralized version says, no, he didn't. Okay, Jim, so do you see why there's an issue? Even though there's billions of copies of the facts, the one who holds the centralized official copy, the one we look to as the authority on the copy, is the one who gets to write the story. So that's why we have a big issue. All right, let's continue and let's get Jonathan's take. He's going to say more in just a minute.
Well, that's.
Well, so the model that you just laid out, which I think is very
I'm
interesting.
somewhat optimistic about that.
Yeah. Well, it did happen on the computational front. I mean,
It's happened a couple times both directions,
Okay.
right? The PC revolution was amazing,
Yeah.
right? And Microsoft was a fantastic company. It enabled everybody to write a $10, $50 program to use,
Yeah.
right? And then at some point, they're also, let's say a difficult program company. And they made money off a lot of people and became extremely valuable. Now, for the most part, they haven't been that directional in telling you what to do and think and how to do it. But they are a money-making company.
And they are getting more directional, Jim. The OpenAI sponsorship by Microsoft is very much directional in terms of what OpenAI is presenting to the world as facts, especially about religion, but about other things as well. They may appear neutral in terms of the creation of these platforms that everyone uses, but they are directional in terms of having a distinct agenda. We even see that to be the case with even just the Gates Foundation and how they spend the byproducts of the institutional funds gained. So we're going to skip past a little bit more Jim's here. I want to get Jonathan's take here. I realize it's a little bit later than I thought. Here we go.
Not like you can't stop a wave with your hand.
Yeah. Well, when you think
it's
about
happening,
the two waves, there are two actually in the book of Revelation, which describes the end or describes the finality of all things or the totality of all things is maybe a way for people who are more secular to kind of understand it. And in that book, there are two interesting images about technology. One is that there's a dragon that falls from the heavens, and that dragon makes a beast. And then that beast makes an image of the beast, and then the image speaks. And when the image speaks, then people are so mesmerized by the speaking image that they worship the beast ultimately. So that is one image of, let's say, making and technology in Scripture, in Revelation. But there's another image, which is the image of the heavenly Jerusalem. And that image is more an image of balance. It's an image of the city which comes down from heaven with a garden in the center and then becomes this glorious city. And it says, the glory of all the kings is gathered into the city. So the glory of all the nations is gathered into this city. So now you see a technology which is at the service of human flourishing and takes the best of humans and brings it into itself in order to kind of manifest. And it also has hierarchy, which means it has the natural at the center and then has the artificial as serving the natural, you could say. So
I would really love to have a conversation with Jonathan. So Jonathan, if you're listening, let's talk. I really agree with a lot of what he's saying here, especially about the dragon and the beast. But I think this bit about the heavenly Jerusalem and the linkage of that to technology is a little bit off in my view. And here's why. The heavenly Jerusalem is described, the architect and builder is God. The Bible says that about the New Jerusalem, that it's a city made not with human hands, but with God as the architect and the builder. And yet technology is very much created by human hands. It is the byproduct or the product of human wisdom, human innovation, human creation. And so to say that this technological thing is somehow the heavenly Jerusalem, I would say whose product is technology? And I do believe wisdom comes from God, but how we use that wisdom is very much a decision made by humans. So I like where you're going though, Jonathan. Please continue. Let's talk.
Well, those two images seem to reflect these two waves that we see, and this kind of idea of an artificial intelligence which will be ruling over us or speaking over us. But there's a secret person controlling it. Even in Revelation, it's like there's a beast controlling it and making it speak. So now we're mesmerized by it. And then this other image. So I don't know, Jordan, if you ever thought about those two images in Revelation as being related to technology, let's say.
Well, I don't think I've thought about those two images in the specific manner that you described, but I would say that the work that I've been doing, and I think the work you've been doing too, in the public front, reflects the dichotomy between those images. And it's relevant to the points that Jim has been making. I mean, we are definitely increasing our technological power. And you can imagine that that'll increase our capacity for tyranny and also our capacity for abundance. And then the question becomes, what do we need to do in order to increase the probability that we tilt the future towards Jerusalem and away from the beast? And
okay, do you see now? Here's the double-edged sword again. We're getting back to this thing where the same technology, AI, has the ability to create great prosperity, potentially great harm. How do you reconcile those two in a state of inevitability? Now, it's pretty much widely accepted everywhere that there's no putting this back in the bottle. The fact of the matter is AI will now exist into the future, and as much as we maybe don't want it to, we need to somehow now, from a secular perspective, tilt the balance towards the good outcomes and away from the bad outcomes. And how do you do that? Whose plan do you adopt when you attempt to do that? Those are really, really questions of great gravity. So that's the kind of question that Jordan's asking now. Let's keep going.
And the reason that I've been concentrating on helping people bolster their individual morality to the degree that I've managed that is because I think that whether the outcome is the positive outcome that in some sense Jim has been outlining or the negative outcomes that we've been querying him about, I think that's going to be dependent on the individual ethical choices of people, well, at the individual level, but then cumulatively, right? So if we decide that we're going to worship the image of the beast, so to speak, because we're mesmerized by our own reflection, that's another way of thinking about it, and we want to be the victim of our own dark desires, then the IA revolution is going to go very, very badly. Yeah. But if we decide that we're going to aim up in some positive way and we make the right micro decisions, well, then maybe we can harness this technology to produce a time of abundance in the manner that Jim is hopeful about.
Yeah, and let me make two funny points. So one is...
All right, Jim, let me come back to your funny points in just a second. I want to talk about what Jordan just said. He said basically the fundamental thrust of one of our other videos, which was that Christians, we need to get better at harnessing the tools that we have available to achieve God's outcomes while we still can. Because those who control these technologies, they will not stand for, I believe, they will not stand for the truth on these platforms forever. And they will start to use these ultra powerful tools to create a different world than one that is prosperous for Christians. I think the book of Revelation pretty clearly describes that as not just a likelihood, but a certainty. And so as I see these parallels getting sharper and more well-defined between the world of Revelation and the world of today, I think that we definitely have a case here for awareness and a need for some change. And so I think it's a pretty interesting point. Okay, so let's get back to Jim's point. We got a lot yet to do in this video. I don't want to waste a lot of time on this, but I wanted you to see sort of Jonathan's thought process here and the case that he makes as a fair representation of, is AI the beast or is it the New Jerusalem? Let's keep going.
I think there's going to be continuum. Like the word artificial intelligence won't actually make any sense soon, right? So humans collectively, like individuals know stuff, but collectively we know a lot more, right? And the thing that's really good is in a diverse society with lots of people pursuing individual, interesting, ideas, worlds, like we have a lot of things, and more people, more independence generates more diversity. And that's a good thing where, totalitarian society where everybody's told to wear the same shirt and like it's inherently boring. Mm-hmm. Like the beast speaking through the monster is inherently dull, right? Like, but in an intelligent world where not only can we have more intelligent things, but in some places go far beyond what most humans are capable of in pursuit of interesting variety. And, I believe the information and, let's say intelligence is essentially unlimited, right? Like, and the unlimited intelligence won't be this shiny thing that tells everybody what to do. That's sort of the opposite of interesting intelligence. Interesting intelligence will be more diverse, not less diverse. Mm-hmm. Like that's a good future. And your second description, that seems like a future worth working for and also worth fighting for. And that means concrete things today. And also, it's a good conceptualization. Like,
this course, Designed for a Better World, is based on this book.
I love ads that play during my production.
The world's going to end. We're going to run out of everything. You're a bad person. Why do you even exist? It's artificial intelligence that we draw. You'll see all these kind of really interesting partnerships and all kinds of things, and more people doing what they want, which is the world I want to live in.
Yeah.
And,
But to me, it seems like the question is going to be related to attention ultimately. That is, what are humans attending to at the highest? What is it that humans care for in the highest? In some ways you could say, what are humans worshiping? And depending on what humans worship, then their actions will play out in the technology that they're creating, in the increase in power that they're creating.
Well, and if we're guided by the negative vision, the sort of thing that Jim laid out that is being taught to his children, you can imagine that we're in for a pretty damn dismal future, right? Yeah. Human beings are a cancer on the face of the planet. There's too many of us. We have to accept top-down compelled limits to growth. There's not enough for everybody. A bunch of us have to go because there is too many people on the planet. We have to raise up the price of energy so that we don't, burn the planet up with carbon dioxide pollution, et cetera. It's a pretty damn dismal view of the potential that's in front of us. And
I feel like that was a pretty strong reaction from Jordan, but I think it was because of the edge of truth from Jonathan. I feel like we should play it again.
I want to live in.
Yeah. But to me, it seems like the question is going to be related to attention ultimately. That is, what are humans attending to at the highest? What is it that humans care for in the highest? In some ways you could say, what are humans worshiping? And depending on what humans worship, then their actions will play out in the technology that they're creating, in the increase in power that they're creating.
Well,
what are humans attending to in the highest? What are they in fact worshiping as they go about creating the power systems and the tools that they use to define the world and to manipulate the world? Jonathan's question is really well received. I think that the question is a lot about attention, and it is a lot about what do humans attend to? What holds their ultimate allegiance? Does God hold their ultimate allegiance, or does the technology hold their ultimate allegiance? Does God guide the course of their life, or are people increasingly programmed by and influenced by and accepting of the influence of technology over their life? That's really the tipping point of the future. And I think that it's not just the reason why this is such a double-edged sword is because it's actually a divergence of two paths. Jonathan describes this world of the beast and the dragon as this world that is really kind of fully integrated with technology, fully guided by the dragon and this mythical beast that can speak, and everyone's in wonder and amazement. But the people choose to worship that, the beast. And I always thought it was so strange. Like, if this thing popped up and it wanted everyone to worship it, how would it be? Could people really leave and forsake God in exchange for something else? Yet when I look around me, I see that. I see people leaving God for technologies. And I see people exchanging the truth for a lie. And so to some extent, already the answer is yes. Tragically, yes. What do they worship? What do they attend to at the highest level of their allegiance? And I think that's why it's been my goal, or a hopeful goal, to hopefully increase our resolve to stand with God. Some people wonder, why do you talk so much about AI? Why do you look into this question so intently? And I think it's because I see the allegiance choice right in front of us. Do I dive further into imagination and illusion, or do I dive further into truth? Do I go the way of the world, which is to empower and enhance the visions of our sinful mind? Or do I go into what is the reality around me, and even if it's uncomfortable, work God's will as far as I'm able to on this planet in serving others and serving God? All right. Well, it's a big issue we've exposed here, or brought up here, I guess, but I want to take us to the Word. There's actually a number of verses that I want to take us to. Remember that Satan is the father of lies. John 8:44, Jesus talks to people, and he's talking to his enemies, and he says, "You belong to your father, the devil. You want to carry out your father's desires. He was a murderer from the beginning, not holding to the truth, for there is no truth in him. When he lies, he speaks his native language, for he is a liar and the father of lies." When I see the technologies that are comfortable with lying, or how do they call them? It's like there's a term for it within the world of AIs. They don't call it lies. They call it like, it'll come back to me. They call it like, it's an illusion. Like the AI doesn't quite fully understand what's happening, and so it says something. And there's been documented cases where the AI has told things that are blatantly false. And yeah, so I mean, at least that reminds me of this, that there's no truth in him, that he speaks his native language. It's a bunch of lies. So watch out for that. 1 John 4, "Dear friends, do not believe every spirit, but test the spirits to see whether they are from God, because many false prophets have gone out into the world." I see a world right now, it's full of people who have a very different gospel than the gospel of the Bible that they preach. There's a lot of false gospels out there. Watch out. Okay. "This is how you can recognize the Spirit of God. Every spirit that acknowledges Jesus Christ has come in the flesh is from God. But every spirit that does not acknowledge Jesus is not from God. This is the spirit of the Antichrist, which you have heard is coming and is even now already in the world." Friends, Jesus is Lord. He is Lord. If you ever encounter a spirit and you're like, I don't know if this voice is from God or whatever, just say to that voice, "Jesus is Lord." A voice that is not from God cannot say that back to you. But also, they can't even confess Christ. When you look at some of these technologies, it's amazing to me that they can't even say that Jesus came. They can't even say that he truly did the miracles he did. They can't say that he was from God. And so we see an embodiment, I guess, all around us in the world, but especially, I think, at the pinnacle of human technology. We see that being broadcast. And it's the spirit of the Antichrist. We need to watch out for it. Remember, friends, James 1:17, it says, "Every good and perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of the heavenly lights, who does not change like the shifting shadows." God isn't one who changes day after day. He's not one for illusions. Satan is all about illusions. He masquerades as an angel of light, the Bible says. That's not who he is. He's the prince of the power of the air. He's the enemy of God. He's darkness. But he masquerades as an angel of light. So you have a pretend world of lies, and that is very much the world of Satan and not the world of God. God doesn't change like the shifting shadows. There's no falsehood in God. He's truth. He is truth. John 14:6. And so when you look at, even this in context, "Don't be deceived, my brothers." He chose to give us birth through the word of truth, that we would be a kind of first fruits of his creation. I think that when the world descends into more and more illusion, Christians ought to continue to remember not to be deceived by illusion. But we have a beast situation. And I think that the beast situation that we see, some of this is very symbolic of what I think the internet is. People are like, "Hey, be a little bit more clear. Let me be as clear as I can. I think that when I read this passage and it talks about this beast coming out of the sea and it has a blasphemous name and it's got these multiple heads, I think that those represent powers of authority, kings, you could say. But this coming out of the sea and speaking blasphemy is exactly what the internet basically does. It crosses the sea on an undersea cable, lands on every country of the world. And what is the primary content of the internet? Is it glorifying to God? The primary contents of the internet are mostly not glorifying to God. And then there's another beast, and there's other authorities here. It says one of the heads of the beast seems to have a fatal wound. The fatal wound had been healed. The whole world was filled with wonder and followed the beast. People worshipped the dragon because he had given authority to the beast. They also worshipped the beast and asked, who's like the beast? Who can wage war against it? The beast was given a mouth to utter proud words and blasphemies and to exercise its authority for 42 months. And it opens its mouth to blaspheme God and to slander his name and his dwelling place and all who live in heaven. And it was given power to wage... Oops. Can't take that away. Got weird Windows things happening here. It was given power to wage war against God's holy people. And it was given authority over every tribe, people, language, and nation. Okay. Then we have a second beast. Coming out of the earth, it had 2 horns. It spoke like a dragon. It exercised all the authority of the first beast and made the earth and its inhabitants worship the first beast whose fatal wound had been healed. Second beast comes out of the earth. The thing that comprises most of these computers is aluminum and minerals and silicon, things that come out of the earth. You know, the information itself, which is transmitted by these undersea cables, has to be processed, has to be somehow organized. And that's what these computers do, and quantum systems are going to do. And yes, AI systems. And this ability of AIs to speak and has almost like a mythical ability to speak, even as Jonathan identifies, and people are amazed by this. It sounds a lot like this, and it exercises the authority of the first beast. So if the first beast is the internet and the AI speaks on behalf of the internet, and it's like it was breathed life into by that first beast. Okay? And so we see the first beast, I think that's the internet. I think the second beast is AI systems. And then we see another beast. And it's not right here, but this image is mentioned here. And yet we see in another passage in Revelation, the beast that comes out of the abyss, which I think is probably talking about the physical body. It says it was given a mouth to speak these blasphemies. It needs an actual mouth to do that. And I think that it will have a synthetic rubber, mouth. It will have a body. The propensity of humans to worship things and create idols is unmatched, and things don't change. I mean, humans have been idol makers throughout time. They think they can create a god, and they want to worship that thing that they created. And I think that it won't take long before we see a more sophisticated robot that embodies the AI, and especially the quantum AI, the most powerful form of AI, and then speaks these blasphemies for this time. And look at this. It says, the second beast was given power to give breath to the image of the first beast so that the image could speak. I think about AI and just the way it works, and it's like, it's a robot that has AI working with it would be able to speak. And I find that to be so interesting that this is almost the exact thing that it's talking about. And then it, so namely the image of the beast, and remember, all these things go back to the dragon, who's the liar, who's Satan, right? It forces all people to get this mark. They can't buy or sell unless they had the mark. And then it talks about people worshiping, and those who refuse to worship would be killed. And as I had thought about this, like, how is it that people would ever worship anything other than Jesus, other than God? And yet when I see the technologies as they are being presented, and their ability to create fabrications and their ability to create economic power and economic leverage, I see people already turning to these things and these tools as the answer to all of their problems, as the source of authority. And as I look at Jonathan's kind of comments there about what do people attend to at the highest level? what holds their allegiance? If you look around the world today, what would you say holds most people's attention? What would you say holds most people's allegiance? When it comes down to them searching for facts, where do they turn? Are they turning to the Bible, or are they turning to a smartphone? Divergent paths are right here in front of us. The world of illusion and the world of reality. And I think that this link that even Jonathan identifies to the book of Revelation is very well reasoned and well founded. And so I would love to talk with him more sometime about that. But suffice to say, in summary here, we are heading into a world of illusions. We are heading, to use Yuval's words, into the Plato's cave. When the people around us aren't even really sure anymore what is real and what is fake. And in that world, the Christian stands tethered to the truth, anchored to the truth, knowing full well the truth of God, which is Jesus Christ, which is his word. Meanwhile, the world stands tethered to a device, to a network, to a system. They don't even realize it, but the system is actually speaking blasphemies against God, blasphemies against his people. And that's why I think this calls for great wisdom and endurance among God's people. When that system will cut and damage Christians and kill Christians and even, yes, kick them out of economies, we will be ready for that fight because we know it's going to take place. And we've already seen who wins in the end. So Jonathan's kind of final thing is that, like, in this interview, he basically says that, like, I know that the end is good, but I think we're going to have to walk through hell to get to the end. And I think that the world facing Christians ahead is very difficult. And it is going to be the difficulty like which no one has ever seen since the beginning of time. Even Jesus talked about that. He said, that time near the end is going to be very, very difficult. So I think for Christians, we're going to be facing great difficulty, slander, subservience, persecutions of many kinds. And the world will be facing greater and greater utopias as they create a multi-caste system and they have servitude of a multitude of people, as they have tools which enable them to think of themselves as godlike while being devilish. And they have power that is basically unmatched on this planet through the weapon systems that they have available to them, through information systems they have available to them, and economic systems as well. And so you see divergent paths. You have a broad path that leads to destruction. You have a narrow path which leads to life, just as Jesus said. Stay on the narrow path, friends, with Jesus. Cling to him and his word even more tightly. And I would warn against accepting the visions of a utopia that don't include God. Even at the greatest ends of human innovation and discovery and might, the vision of the people creating these technologies is a world that doesn't acknowledge God as the giver or worship him at all. And so I have to say that Jerusalem that they think they're building is a fake one. It's not the one made with God's hands. It's this human-made one that, maybe it looks good for a time, but it's going to pass away along with the world and all the world's desires. I love you guys a lot. I hope now it makes a little more sense. I lost a few friends this year, and I lost them because they thought I was being too serious about this stuff. And I hope at least now maybe I can regain those friends. I really love them a lot. And I had to part ways with them for a time, but I really hope that perhaps some of them will come back to me and say, hey, you know what, Andrew, I think you're right. I think there were some real underlying dangers here with this technology. At least I hope we can be friends again. All right, guys, take care. Love you lots. Hang on to Jesus. He holds the future. He holds the end of time, and he holds our very lives. God bless.